Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Paul, for the introductions. So my name is Janice Kim, a lecturer at the School of Education. So I'm very delighted to be part of the open lecture series on education research methods and have opportunity to share some of my work today. So in this session, I'll be focusing on how we can conduct comparative education research using international large-scale assessment data such as the PISA and TIMSS, and then exploring both the opportunities and also like critical considerations these data present. So in today's presentation, I will begin with an overview of international large-scale assessment, including what they are, why they matter, and also major assessments commonly used in education research. I will then walk through some of the key steps and considerations for conducting research using ILSA data. And then also following this, I will introduce a case study from my own research, which examines trends in socioeconomic disparities in adolescent occupational expectations. This comparative study focuses on US and UK using PISA data from 2000 to 2022. And then we will wrap up with a short Q&A session, and please feel free to leave any questions in the chat. Before we begin, I would like to express my thanks to my research team led by Professor Suyong Byun at Penn State Universities with Suyong Park and Sujin Kim for their collaboration on the work. And then also, I would like to thank Paul and Amy for organizing this session as part of the open lecture series. So first of all, what are the international large-scale assessments? I think we already know PISA and TIMSS, but we will just have a step-by-step what is this one and how they influence education practice and policies and research. So ILSA are cross-national studies that measure students' achievement using standardized tests. So they are conducted in many countries to collect comparable data on educational outcomes. And then testing representative sample of students in key subject areas like math, reading, and science. These data provide a global snapshot of how well students are learning essential skills and also knowledge. And then as defined here by both, it studies effects of contextual factors as system, school, classroom, and also students' level on achievement. And then these assessments go beyond one country's perspectives. It enables education researchers and also policymakers to compare results across different education systems. So why are ILSAs important? So they play a crucial role in education research and policymaking. So they allow countries to benchmark students' performance against international standards and also across national systems. And then this exercise helps identify strengths and also weakness of education systems, and then also inform policy reforms and also best practices. And then the ILSAs also feed into global education goals. So data from PISA, TIMSS, PIRST are used to monitor progress towards UN Sustainable Development Goals, such as tracking the percentage of students reaching minimum proficiency in math and reading. But also these tests, large-scale tests, have been subject to critics, including concerns about league table effects with international rankings and also narrowing of education priorities to specific academic outcomes. But this lecture focuses on research methods, so we will not explore those critics in detail today. And then from a methodological point of view, these data sets are powerful resources for secondary data analysis. So they're standardized, design facilitates cross-national comparisons, and then also offering a structured way to examine educational trends and also disparities. And then most data sets are publicly available and supported by comprehensive technical documentations, which I will show you in the later slides. So this is make them like good starting points for researchers, like academic researchers interested in comparative educations and also quantitative methods. So let's move on to like influence of like international large scale assessments. To illustrate like how widespread PISA's influence has become, a simple search for like what PISA tells us about schools. And then this shows like news coverage from countries from like Singapore, the United States, Denmark, and England, alongside like global analysis. So it's just to demonstrate how the test has become like embedded in like international education discourse. And then Braxpear's working paper published in 2012 also analyzed the policy impact of PISA. He outlined like how these data are used to inform system level evaluations, support the development of national assessment systems, monitor equity and subgroup performance, and also like evaluate the effectiveness of the reforms. So here is an example from BBC News on the reporting on the most recent PISA 2022 cycle. So this article highlights that average mathematics scores declined across all UK nations, including Scotland, and reflecting a broader trends observed in many OECD countries. But also, like PISA often discussed in the context of academic performance, it is important to note that the assessment also collects extensive background data through students' questionnaires. So another like article like from the same PISA cycle drew attention to students' well-being, reporting that like food insecurity among UK teenagers is above the OECD average and higher than like other Western European countries. Then let's look at like a key international large assessments. So there are like international like two main players. One arm is like OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The other organization is IEA, International Association for the Evaluation of Educational Achievement. So IEA is an independent international cooperative of national research institutions and also government agencies. So OECD like administered PISA, but also like TALIS for teachers, Teaching and Learning International Survey, and then also like other two skills called the PIAC, the Program for International Assessment of Adult Competencies. And then IEA also like administer 4 major international largest scale assessments, TIMSS, PIRS, and ICCS, and also ICILS. I will go over these kind of major ILSAs in the next slides. So I think I don't have to like elaborate further like on PISA, as many of like academic researchers you already know. So the PISA is a program for international students assessment. It's like international survey testing the skills and knowledge of like 15-year-old students in mathematics, readings, and science. So PISA conduct every 3 years, starting from 2000, and now to date, like 81 countries and economies took part in the latest PISA 2022 assessments. They focus on like mathematics, reading, science, but additional surveys were conducted by cycle, such as financial literacy, digital literacy, or creative thinking. The other major player, IEA, also administer like TIMSS and PIRS. So the PIRS is a progress in international reading literacy study measures trends in children's reading literacy achievement at age 10. And then also the other ILSA is a trends in international mathematics and sciences study. They are they are older than like PISA. So they started like in 1995. And then over like 8 or 9 cycles, they have been collect achievement of 4th and 8th grade students' mathematics performance. I briefly mentioned about like TALIS and PIAC. So the TALIS is more gathering like information from teachers and also school leaders. So TALIS 2018 sampled about 260,000 teachers in 15,000 schools across 48 education systems. And then also PIAG is more adult skills. This is not school-based, it's more household-based survey. And then they collect the data on the level and distribution of skills among their adults aged 16 to 65 years. Another 2 more thematic like international large scale assessments is ICCS, the International Civic and Citizenship Education Study, and then also International Computer and Information Literacy Study conducted by IEA. So they are more focusing on digital and computer information literacy. So this is more specific, like the research interest in civic education, citizenship education, or digital literacy or information literacies. I think most like ILSA dominates with the PISA or PIRS teams, but there is also like international large scale assessment in global south context. So one is PASEC, the program for the analysis of educational systems of the Comparative. So they are more collecting data from francophone countries in Africa, Middle East, and Asia. And then also SAMEC, the Southern Eastern African Consortium for monitoring education quality, collected educational achievement data from 16 countries, including Angola, Malawi, Tanzania, Uganda as well. There is a 2 like school-based survey, EGRA and AGMA, which also conducted in more than like 100 countries, and then measure early grade reading and also early grade math achievement. So from like more policy maker perspectives, there are like advantages and also disadvantages of like using international large scale assessments. So first, the dimension is like benchmarking. So using ILSAs, giving you like external benchmarking of students' achievement against peers from other countries. But in the meantime, assessment like international assessment may not be closely aligned with national curriculum goals and standards. And then also ILSAs has very strict like every 3 years cycles or every 4 years cycles, and then very specific like scoring rubrics, measurement weights, and sampling strategies. And then it's, as I just say in the beginning, it's very standardized assessments which enable us to like compare scores over time. But it also can be downside because there's a little rooms to adjust administrations. So it's not always like very matching well with a country's policy and information needs. And then to administer and use international large-scale assessments needs technical capacities. So for the country, there can be the opportunity for technical capacity buildings, but also it needs very intensive like trainings and analysis to utilize international large scale assessments in the like education policy making. But as a academic researcher, we also look at the benefits and also challenges of analyzing international large-scale assessments. So data has already been collected for you, and then usually cleaned, and then often comes with technical assistance, notes, and report for guidance. So it can save your time, energy, money over doing your own original research. And then also it contains huge numbers of cases, and then also over the cycles, it updated on a regular basis. And then using ILSAs needs intensive trainings, and then it leads to building your capacity of you applying quantitative research methods. And then it gives you very good quick overview of trends over time. And then you can also research on historical topics and subject as well. But in the meantime, it has challenges because it's not, the data didn't have a chance to read your mind. So much data is not collected with the social sciences in mind. And then I think PISA or PIRSS and TIMSS has a really detailed guidelines, but some ILSAs have a lack of details on methodology and data collections as well. And then you have to think about reliabilities and also validity of the data set. And then depending on your research questions, you can find the right variables to answer your research questions. So I think there is pros and cons to using ILSAs for your own research. And then let's move on to how academic use international large scale assessments. This is one of the readings I shared before. So they analyze number of publications using ILSAs in education between 1997 to 2020. As you can see, PISA, TIMSS, PIRSS, ICCS, and ICLs are kind of dominant key data sets that academics use in peer-reviewed academic journals. So almost 60% used PISA, and then 30% on TIMSS, 10% on PIRSS, and also rest 10% will have used ICCS or ICLs. And then this figure shows the dynamic growth of publications and citations in the field. So overall, the trends suggest a steady increase in the scholarly interest of ILSA in education research from 1997 to 2020. So we can see there as a three stage. So it's more emergency stage between 1997 to 2006, and then it fermented during 2007 and 2014. But once they take off between 2015 to 2020, at least 200 articles using ILSAs published in academic journals. And then lastly, we will see major research topics on ILSAs and education research. So this is kind of a network mapping, intensity visualizations. So they kind of delve into various topics: achievement, instructions, motivations, attitude, inequalities, policy. So I think there are number of different research topics researchers are trying to address using international large scale assessment. So I think this is a brief overview of ILSA, what is a key data set available, and then how it has been used by media and also academic journals and papers. So now I move on to like key steps for conducting ILSA research. So I defined like 8 steps. And then if you watch the other previous, I think it's the open lecture series by Ellen Bourne and also Jai, that like they use like England data on harmonizing the data set, like large longitudinal data sets. But also like ILSA research has a similar flows to conduct research, but I adapt like in the context of like international large scale assessment. So I will go over one by one, and then how we can kind of utilize ILSA research by step-by-step with step-by-step guidelines. So first we need to like define research questions. So there are like a key questions that international large scale assessments can answer. So this is more focusing on like PISA or PIRS teams on students' academic performance. So I think we can address the questions about how well are students learning in these education systems? Are they meeting specific learning standards? But in the meantime, we can address like the learning by different learning outcomes by particular subgroups. Do particular subgroups like perform worse than others? Or is there any like academic performance disparities between boys and girls, students in urban and rural locations, or students from different language groups? And then also like you can address the factors or determinants of like learning outcomes. What factors are associated? It can be like learning environments or home environment as well. And then the last, you can also address like the trends in students' learning outcomes. Does the students' achievement change over time? And then what factors are linked to changes in students' achievement over time? But as you see the like different sets of ILSAs I introduced beforehand, there is like citizenship educations, digital literacy, and many other factors, many other like questions you can expand and then use ILSAs to address. And then step 2 is download ILSA dataset. So I will just give brief like example from OECD PISA. So this is a link to like PISA dataset. And then this is how they share public use files. It's called like PUF. And then you can download the dataset by each cycle. And then it's available like in SPSS and also SAS, the software formats. But in the meantime, it's easy to bring this data set to other software, data or R, and then they also give the instructions to bring your data set to other software as well. And then only there are like 8 questions you have to answer before you download the data set. And then this is more you acknowledge reading the like data protection notice and agreeing to comply with the terms of use. And then third step is review technical notes, questionnaires, and data analysis manuals. Again, I will focus on like PISA's case. And then questionnaire is really starting point to like find the variable of your interest. So they share master version of questionnaires with like students' questionnaires, well-being, financial literacy, ICT familiarities, and also teacher and parents questionnaires. So you can see like more details, what questions have been asked to students, teachers, and also parents. And then each cycle of the PISA provides technical report. And then also they have the data analysis manual by SPSS, and SAS. So there are many like resources you can utilize to explore data set and data structures and their way to analyze the data. And then I think that there are three technical sides of analyzing ILSA data. So I think we don't have time to like go everything like in deeper. So the three key points is a sampling, weight, and plausible values. So in many cases, like PISA and TIMSS use stratified two-stage samplings. So in the first stage, scores are randomly selected with the probability proportional to size. So larger schools are more likely to be chosen. Then at the second stage, a random sample of students is taken within each selected schools. So let's just say like in one country, like 100 to like minimum 100 to 150 schools are randomly selected. And then within these selected schools, minimum 35 students selected randomly from these schools. So this approach offers a few thousand students per country. And then this sampling is also carefully stratified by regions, school type to cover key subgroups and improve precisions. And then as you can see, students are nested in schools, and then also schools are nested within the countries. So these nested data structures require multi-level modelings, which we just like let them know like students are not independent sample, they are clustered within the schools. And then the second data structure and design technical side is the weights in PISA. So in theory, sampling design provides samples with equal selection probabilities, but a variation in numbers of classes selected and differential patterns of non-response can result in varying selection probabilities, require like a unique sampling weights for the students. So the overall like student weight incorporates both the school weight and also within school students weight. So PISA provides the weight to like, when you like run the analysis, you can put the weights calculated in the within the like PISA data set. And then third technical side is plausible values. So in reporting scores, international large-scale assessments often use methodology of like plausible values. So it's like multiple imputed proficiency scores for each student to account for measurement uncertainty. So instead of like obtaining a point estimate, a range of values are estimated for each student. So I think in the technical support notes from like a PISA, you can see all the details, and then they are really like ready to use. So you know the like how they sample, and then how to use the weight provided in the like data sets, and then what is like range of the students' achievement using plausible values. So if you ignore this complex design, it leads to like wrong conclusions, like different point estimates. So the step three, like in review technical notes, questionnaires, and data analysis manual is very key steps to be familiarized with the data sets. And then I think we think about like SPSS, SAS data are like all like softwares to you analyze PISA data set, but also there are 3 or more like analyzing tools for giving you like very quick overview or quick analysis. So the first one is like international database analyzers. So it's more like window-based software. It's really similar to like SPSS, but developed by IEA. And then they already have data set of like PIRST, TIMSS, and PISA. So, and then they have a really detailed manuals to use this one. And then the other is International Data Explorer. And then this is like by National Center for Education Statistics by US governments. But they are more like online analysis tool. And then with your questions, you can also like simply like click the criteria, variables, edit the reports. So it's more one-to-one, like very simple steps to look at the data. And then before you analyzing data with like softwares and more in-depth studies, it can give you very quick snapshots how it kind of distribute, or how many years of experience do male and female or secondary education teachers have on average. So like you can answer simple questions and then having very quick snapshots of variables of your interest. And then I think the other things I would like to quickly mention is the PISA, OECD PISA also provides codes to compute the tables in PISA publications. I think it's pretty useful to see like how they generate tables and simple analysis in like softwares. So for examples, this is a PISA 2020 publications, one of the tables showing percentage of students at each proficiency levels in mathematics. And then the data codes is I simply download from the OECD website. So they give like step-by-step guidance, how you clean the data, how to make your own data set, and then how to replicate the analysis to create these tables. And then they provide all the publications and tables. So it's quite a lot of like resources that you can see how others making kind of writing the syntax of this certain softwares. So I think now I cover step 2 and step 2 until like download ILSS dataset, and also how to review like technical notes to formalize the datasets you will use. But I'm now introduce the sample study, and then also like elaborate further on the key steps to use international arts assessment. So this is a paper on shifting features, trends in SES disparities in adolescents' expected occupational status in the US and United Kingdom between 2000 and 2022. The research team I acknowledged before, we already presented these papers in 2 conferences, and then it's currently under review in journals. So this is a research purpose. Like this study aims to investigate how the influence of a SES on adolescent occupational expectation has changed in the US and UK over 2 decades, using nationally representative data for 15-year-old students from PISA. And then it kind of taking a comparative perspectives by examining how trends observed in the US differ from those in the UK. So let's go back to our key steps for analysis, and then how we address these key steps in our study. So first, define research questions. So we pose like 3 research questions because this is a more methodological series. So I'm just really briefly like introduce our research to not really detailed about like why and backgrounds of this research. So we pose like 3 questions, like to what extent family assess associated with adolescent expected occupational status in the US and the UK. And then how does this association vary across different levels of expected occupational status, and then also trends between 2000 to 2022. So we already like finished the 2 steps, like download ILSA data set and then also review all the technical notes, questionnaires, and data analysis manuals to be ready. So step 4 is identify variables of interest. So you need to go over like questionnaires and also code book, like what is like variables of your interest. So in this study, our key variable is expected occupational status. And then PISA asks what kind of job do you expect to have when you're about 30 years old? And then this is actually open-ended questions, but PISA coded it to 4-digit international standard classification of occupations, and then map this to international socioeconomic index of occupational status. So all data set like we use from 2000 to 2022, it kind of mapped into ISEA index of occupational status. So this index is a continuous measure of occupational prestige based on educational qualifications and income, and then it ranging from 10 to 1990. So the higher index score means more prestigious job with a higher educational qualifications and a higher income. And then the next step is also operationalization of variables. So it's from like concepts to indicators. So SCS is also one of our key variables. We want to look at like the influence of SCS on expected occupational status. And then there are like tons of different ways to define SCS indicators, socioeconomic status. And then PISA developed and offer the index of economic, social, and cultural status, which is called ESSCS. It's already in the data set you can use. And then they kind of combine 3 indicators. So first is the educations. So they use parents' highest level of educations and using international standard classification of educations. And then second part of the index is home positions. They check like internet connections, electronic devices, car, house size, all like home positions. And then third one is occupations. So similarly, like they ask the parental occupational status and then mapped into ISCO and ISEI index from like 10 to 90 scoring. And then combining these 3 measures, they create the index of economic, social, and cultural status. And then also, in the meantime, we are focusing on US and UK context to conduct this study. And then prior research conducted in the UK suggests that students' report of their father's occupation is the most reliable indicator among 3 common SS indicators, education and income occupations. So in some of like studies using the PISA data from the UK, they often use only like father occupation as proxy of socioeconomic status. So we compare both like ESSCS index and also SS indicators as the father's occupation. So the step 6 is extracting relevant samples and also variables. So we extract the samples from 2 countries of interest, US and UK, and then also validate cases which has valid answers in the questionnaires where we ask about expected occupational status. So as you can see, like over the like 6 cycles, there are different sample size and also valid cases as well. So there are, if you just look closely, 2003 UK have only valid case of 23%. And also 2022, only 58% of students sample answered the questions about expected occupational status. So this is also in 2022, the UK failed to meet the standard students' response standards in general. So and then that leads to the lower valid cases in our study. So we acknowledge this data limitation as a constraint of our study and emphasize the need for caution when interpreting the estimates for these selected PISA cores with a high exclusion rate. And then I will explain later on the findings as well. And then step 7 is identify appropriate analytical strategies. So we use descriptive statistics and then also ordinary least square OLS regressions with cluster robust standard errors. So we briefly touch upon multi-level modeling to just counting for data structures, students nested within the schools. And then in addition to OLS regression, we also run quantile regressions. So quantile regression is a type of regression to estimate the relationship between independent variables and specific quantiles. So it's more captures heterogeneous effects. And then as I acknowledged before, we use survey weights and then also multiple imputations for missing data. So in terms of interest of time, it's almost done. So this is brief analysis and reporting. So we kind of use data to conduct analysis, and then I think I cannot go over step by step, but we use data manuals, and then our knowledge of the data structures to conduct analysis and also reporting the result. So I will just go over three main figures. The first is a descriptive result, which shows students' expected occupational status by country and cohort. So in the blue line, the US, the American adolescents constantly reported a significantly higher expected occupational status than their British counterparts across all cohorts, except for 2022. So in 2020, the first the gap was reversed with British adolescent reporting significantly higher expected occupational status than American peers. And then also, this captures OLS regression result. So despite the reversal, we see in 2022 in descriptive studies, the magnitude of the SS effect remains significantly stronger in the UK than in the US across all cohorts, including 2022. So it indicates that SS backgrounds continues to play a more pronounced role in shaping adolescents' occupational expectations in the UK than in the US. The last one is more quantile regressions of the SS effects on expected occupational status by country and cohort. So we kind of compare the low occupational expectation group and a high occupational expectation groups. So in the US, we see the no significant SS gaps in higher level of expected occupational status. And then it suggests that aspiration for high status professions such as doctors and lawyers are relatively widespread across different SS backgrounds. And then I think UK moreover trends we indicate weakening influence of SES on occupational expectations, which contrast with the patterns observed in the US. So I think this is a kind of example that like we show the comparative like studies using international large scale assessment, like using PISA, and then also trends between 2000 and 2022. So there's a lot of like opportunities using ILSS data, like it's international data, carefully constructed, and then range of variables, and also you can track the change over time. But there are that associated with like challenges as well. So problems in measurement and problems in context as well. So you have to address these critical questions as well. And then I think 3 critical consideration is cultural validity of instrument and translation and adaptations, and also limitation of the cross-sectional data. So just to summing up, these international large-scale assessments offer valuable opportunities for research, but they require a critical and also careful approach. So there are 5 advice I would like to share. So first, begin with a clear, focused research questions. So you have to frame a question that can be addressed by this data and relevant to education policy debates. And then once you have a very clear idea of like research questions and key variables, you now like you need to like understand the data structure and design. So through like a step 3, review like technical notes and like code book and all like kind of a data analyst manuals, you can familiarize yourself with the hierarchical nature of data and then how sampling weights and measurement work. And then the last 3 devices are engage critically with data using analytical tools. So you have some like very simple online data explorer, but also like you can develop proficiency in like statistical software and techniques to explore the data more rigorously. And then I think it's really the next advice is really related to critical considerations. You need to combine ILSS data with contextual knowledge. So complement like your findings with literature on national education systems or qualitative insights, because data has limitation, as I acknowledged before. And then last thing is like building your analysis gradually and iteratively. So you can start with a basic statistics and then also go over like syntax provided by OECD or other like organizations, then expand as your understanding of data and methods deepens. So this is a reference, and thank you very much for giving me opportunity to share my work and also like overview of like international large scale assessment. And over to Paul.